3. Okay, I don't know what I'm doing. See, it did it again. Ooh-wee. Okay. Whew. This is a awkward ass angle. Whoa, where am I gonna go? I have no idea. Of course. Whoa, you guys are just turning around like you're on a tilt-a-whirl or something. Again, I was literally talking to nobody. Okay. Hello, book lovers. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Steph, and in today's video, we will be doing Tackle My TBR episode 4. If this is the first Tackle My TBR episode that you are watching, I will leave the entire playlist linked up above and down below in the description so that you guys can watch all of the previous episodes so that you can understand exactly what we do for Tackle My TBR. But essentially, it is just me wanting to read more of my own books, and I really like to involve my subscribers in the process, so I get my subscribers to send me some coordinates that correspond with books that are on my bookshelf. It is very easy, very simple. If you do want to participate, please leave me a comment down below with your set of coordinates. Again, the coordinates are as follows. The first number is a number between 1 and 10, and that is the amount of bookshelves that I have in play. The second number is a number between 1 and 6, which is the amount of shelves that are on each bookshelf. And then the last number is a number between 1 and 50, which is a rough estimate of how many books are on each shelf. Again, if you do want to familiarize yourself with how we do this game, then please go and watch the previous episodes. But for this episode, we are going to get right on into it. I am going to put the random wheel generator beside me, and as always, I will not know whose comment the coordinates belong to, but when I do edit this video, I will put your comment somewhere on the screen. I also want to mention that there is no right or wrong for how many times that you guys want to send me coordinates. If you want to comment on every single one of these videos and send me coordinates, then please do so. If you want to send me 5 different sets of coordinates, then please do so. The more, the merrier. Okay, so I am just going to record my screen and I will insert the random wheel spinner right here. So let's see what gets selected. Okay, so that was really close, but the first set of coordinates we have are 3, 6, and 16. So we have to go to the other side of the room. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, we are going low. Okay, so this is shelf number 3. Sorry that you guys have such a close-up of my face, but this is shelf number 3. The actual shelf is number 6. And the book, I am gonna be just laying down here. And the book that we will be counting to is number 16. So let's make sure there's nothing there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, which is The Sun is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. Okay, so I have actually already read The Sun is Also a Star, but I have not read the books on either side. Okay, so the way that I'm going to choose it is everyone wanted me to continue on the shelf until I got to a book that I have not read. So I have not read The Fields by Erin Young. So this will be the first book for Tackle My TBR episode 4. Okay, super exciting. Let me move over. I just moved you guys back up because I was literally laying down on the floor and that angle was just atrocious. Okay, so now I will remove those coordinates and we will spin again for our second book for Tackle My TBR episode 4. Let's see what we get. So the first set of coordinates, as you guys can see, is 1, 2, and 3, and I usually do take the first set of coordinates, and as you guys see, there's also a bracket beside 1, 2, and 3, which means 2 people sent it, so I will put both comments on the screen somewhere. So shelf number 1 is my first shelf, so we do have to move on over to the side. Okay, so this is bookshelf number 1, this is shelf 2, and then we have to count to the third book, which is super easy to see. 1, 2, 3, and the book that got selected is Rabbit in Red by Joe Chianakis. I don't even remember where I got this book from, to be honest. I have no idea what it is about, but I'm sure it was a cover buy because this does look really, really cool. It is really short, but the font is a little bit small. So I'm wondering if this will be a quick read or not, but it is under 300 pages, so that is good. And this is going to be book number 2 for Tackle My TBR episode 4. Okay, we're just gonna keep you guys on this level. I'm gonna just move you guys back slightly perfectly. So I am going to remove those coordinates and I will just spin the wheel for the next set of coordinates. Okay, so the next set is 7, 6, and 45. So we do have to move to the other side of the room. Let us get moving and grooving. Now I have to move you guys all the way back down again. Okay, hello. How are we doing on the floor here? So this is the shelf in question. So we do have to count to 45, and as you guys see, there are 2 books that are on the top. So I will just start with these and then move along the shelf and just incorporate those in the count, if that makes sense. But we do need to count to 45. So let us start. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45. Okay. So the book that got selected is Anna K by Jenny Lee, which I have not read yet. So this episode is actually working out perfectly because I have not read a lot of the books that have been selected. So we are going to remove those set of coordinates and let us spin for our next set. Let's see what gets selected. Okay, 7, 4, and 28. So we are actually going to use the exact same shelf, and we're pretty much like already here, which works out perfectly. So I literally just have to move you guys this way. So we are going to pick something from this shelf, so I will just raise you guys slightly. Okay, so I will just count to 28 on this shelf. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22, 4, 2, 5, 2, 6, 27, 28. So 28 is People We Meet on Vacation, which I have already read. And then right beside it is The Serpent's Curse, which is, I think, book 3. Yeah, this is book 3 in the Last Magicians series, but I have not read book 2, so I will find book 2 and then I will put that on the TBR for this video. It's actually conveniently right on my red shelf here. So this is book 2 in that series, and I did just read The Last Magician and really, really liked it. So I am excited, but this is almost 700 pages, so I am slightly scared. Okay, so I have decided that I am going to do one more pick, so I am hoping that it is a good pick, but I haven't done 5 books in an episode yet, and again, I really, really want to read owned books, so let's try to do 5 books for this episode. So this will be our last pick for Tackle My TBR episode 4. So I'm just going to remove those coordinates and we are going to spin our last set of coordinates. Ooh, that was really, really close. Okay, so it's 4, 2, 26 or 9, 4, and 12. Okay, so I do usually pick the first set of coordinates, which is 4, 2, and 26. So we do have to go to the other side of the room. So this is the shelf that we are picking from, and we do need to count to 26. So let us get started. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. So I don't know if you can see that, but the book that got selected is The Woman in the Library, which is another one that I have not read. So I am very excited to get to this. Okay, so I do feel like we got a really good mixed bag of genres, sizes of books, and like books that nobody has actually heard of or that I have heard people talking about. So I think that we have a very good mix of books. So the first book that got selected was The Fields by Erin Young. This is a book that I have no idea what it is about. I don't hear anybody talking about it, but I was very intrigued by the cover. So this sounds like it is a crime fiction. It does start with the finding of a dead body of a young woman, and it sounds like the detective on the case actually has a personal connection to the victim. So when the detective does show up on scene, they realize that they do know who this victim is. And this book is blurbed by Will Dean, which I just read a book of Will Dean's and absolutely loved it. So I am very excited to get into this. Then I picked Rabbit in Red, which I have not heard anybody talking about, but reading the back, it does sound like it follows a bunch of teenagers who are absolutely obsessed with horror movies. And they basically get this opportunity with this horror producer that has like essentially created a competition for them, and it involves like a cash prize, and they also get to make their own horror movie. But it does sound like the art of making movies then kind of turns into real life. So I believe that this is a horror novel and it sounds like it'll be right up my alley. Again, I don't hear anybody talking about it, so I am very curious to see how I feel about it, but it is pretty short, so I'm hoping I can get through this one quickly. So then the book that got selected was Anna K by Jenny Lee. This sounds like it is a contemporary romance novel where we are following our main character, Anna, and she essentially has this perfect life. She has the perfect job. Everybody really gravitates towards her. She's just basically described as having this perfect life, but then she meets a man that kind of takes her world and turns it upside down. They both have never really been in love, but they do find themselves kind of gravitating towards each other. So it sounds like this is going to be like a very quick read. Also a great palate cleanser for some of the other books that I do have to read. So I am excited to finally get to this. So then the book that got selected was The Devil's Thief, which is book 2 in the Last Magician series. In book 1, we are following a backdrop of Manhattan where magic no longer exists, but there are certain people that still do possess the ability to use magic, but anybody that is caught using magic ends up at this place called the Brink, which is basically something that just traps them in there so they are not able to go to the outside world. There is a lot more that takes place in it, but that is the basic premise. I do not know anything about book 2, but I am excited to still follow some of these characters. There was some really good reveals in book 1, and this one is very long, but I'm hoping that I do enjoy it as much as I did book 1. Then the last book that got selected was The Woman in the Library. This book I am a little bit scared about because the back of the book, the premise sounds very good. We are in the setting of a library and everything is kind of as it should be, but then all of a sudden there is this scream from a woman, and everybody that is in this library basically has to stay there until they are able to investigate what has happened to this woman. And it sounds like there is a cast of characters that are all sitting at the same table and they kind of get to talking and building a relationship. I have heard reviews on this book and they are not the greatest. It also says that the premise of this book is actually not really what the book is about. So I am very curious to see like how I feel about it and if I also feel the same about this book, but I am excited to finally get to this because this has been an anticipated release ever since I saw the cover, which I absolutely love. Okay, so those are the 5 books that I do have to read for Tackle My TBR episode 4. So as you guys know, I usually do a 50% check-in and then my final thoughts on the books. So once I do start reading these books, I will let you guys know my thoughts. I think that the genres are very well spread out. I think I have a little bit of everything in this episode of Tackle My TBR, so I am hoping that I really do enjoy these books. Again, these are books that I never would have really gravitated towards on my shelf, so I am very excited that they did get selected. I hope that you guys are enjoying this series. I absolutely love filming this series, and again, if you do want to drop me any sets of coordinates, please do so down below in the comments, and I will check back in once I have some updates on these books. Hey, hello, and welcome to the first update of Tackle My TBR episode 4. I'm currently on vacation in Europe, so the recording locations for these updates are going to be completely different than what I am used to, but hopefully I can figure it out and it's not too bad. So as you guys saw, the first book that I am starting with is Rabbit in Red. This is by Joe Chinakis, which I have never read from before. I had never heard of this author before, but just to give you a little bit more context on this book, this is like a YA horror. We are following our main character, Bill. I think his name is Bill. I'm hoping his name is Bill. And he has a friendship with this girl named Jamie, who he has never met in person, but they met on a chat line and they have always just talked, and they have a very like big love for horror. And then this horror like movie producer, I think he's a movie producer, he basically puts on this contest where he wants these teens between the ages of like 16 to 21 or something. It's like a young age group. And he basically opens up a contest where they have to take this quiz. And if you score really high on this quiz, you get to go to his production studio. And if you win this contest, then you are able to work with him and eventually make your own horror movie or kind of whatever you want to do in that genre. That is the basic premise of this book. So at the beginning, we are following our main character and him and his friend trying to qualify for this contest. And yeah, I am just about 50 50% of the way through this. I think I am just over the 50% mark. And my initial thoughts are I'm having a decent time reading this. I'm not hating it. I'm not loving it. I think again that it reads super YA, and I just haven't had the best luck with YA, but there are some really, really cool elements in this book. So this book makes so many references to other horror movies. So while they're taking this quiz, you are kind of given these clues. You basically have to figure out like what horror movie it's for. So if you are a fan of horror, it's very nostalgic and like very, very cool to see if you are able to guess these clues as well. It makes a lot of references to different horror movies, a lot of references to just like horror in general. And I'm absolutely loving that about this book. There is a mystery element going on here as well. And yeah, I'm just having a really good time with those elements of the book. The actual story of this, I don't care too much about. Like, I really don't care who's going to win this contest. I don't care what they're going to do when they win. I'm not invested in any of the characters, but the nostalgic feels I'm getting from this book are like really, really good. I did just pick this book up on a like whim. I have never heard anyone talking about it. The Goodreads reviews, I think there's only like about 300, so it's definitely not a popular book, but I am having a really good time with it. I love the horror references. So yeah, I will check back in once I do finish this book, but right now it is probably sitting at a 3-star, very average. I'm having a decent time reading it, and it's a very, very quick read. I think it is under 300 pages, but it also just goes by really, really quickly. Very easy and fast to read. So I should be able to finish this within the next couple of days, and I will check back in with my final thoughts. Okay, so I did finish reading Rabbit in Red. I did end up giving it a 3 stars. It kind of just stayed the exact same for me. Nothing really changed about it. I absolutely loved the nostalgic vibes that I got from it. I loved that it like paid tribute to so many like classic horror movies. So that was super, super interesting and fun to read. But the actual mystery portion of it and the actual conclusion of the book was just very mediocre. I pretty much figured that that is exactly what was going to happen, just the way that things kind of played out in the end. And I just really did not feel any like personal connection to the characters. So the stakes that were supposed to be like very high stakes just did not feel that way to me. Again, this is a YA book, and I feel like I sound like a broken record, but YA just really has not been doing it for me lately. But if you are a fan of old horror movies and you do like nostalgic vibes, I still would recommend this series. I personally don't think that I will be continuing this series, but I do think that it is a pretty solid book, especially if you are looking for like nostalgic horror vibes. Again, though, the ending just felt a little bit lackluster, as the stakes just didn't feel very high, as we were told the entire time that this was all like a simulation and that nothing was actually going to happen to these characters. So the ending just felt like a little bit of a cop-out, but again, a 3-star, very average rating. I'm not mad at it. I still think that it is a decent read, and I am happy that I finally read this book from my shelves. Okay, and then I am just over 50% done with Anna K. This was the next book that I decided to pick up for Tackle My TBR episode 4. And so far with this book, again, it is just a very average read. I don't hate it, but I'm not absolutely loving it. So just to give you guys a little bit more on what this book is about, this is very, very much Gossip Girl meets like Crazy Rich Asians, which I believe is how it was pitched on Goodreads, or I heard someone's review or read someone's review that said that. And I have to say that I 100% agree with that. A lot of trigger warnings for this, a lot of drug use going on, a lot of cheating happening in this book. This is actually an Anna Karenina retelling, which I don't know if I mentioned that, but I don't know the actual story of Anna Karenina, so this is like a completely new experience for me. I don't really know that story and what is being pulled from that story into this story. So again, I am 50% of the way through. A little bit more context on this book. I don't really know that there is a true plot that is happening in this book, but we are following our main character, Anna, who is pretty much liked by everyone, and she is dating somebody named Alexander. Then there is a different character that gets announced, and honestly, I don't even remember his name, but she starts to, I don't even want to say get feelings for him, but she is very intrigued by this guy. And yeah, his name is also Alex, and she becomes very intrigued with this character. And then there is a couple of side stories that are taking place. So Anna's brother is caught caught or found out to have been cheating on his girlfriend, and they are kind of working that relationship. And then there is also another storyline where a character is tutoring her brother. There's a lot happening, a lot of drama, a lot of like rich people problems that are taking place, and I'm not loving this book, but I'm also not hating it. I'm not having a bad time reading it. Yeah, so far I just feel very average about the books that I'm reading, but I don't think that that's a bad thing, because at least I am not absolutely hating them, and I am getting through more books on my shelves. So when I do finish this book, I will update you guys with my final thoughts on it, and I'm hoping that a lot more takes place and that there is an actual plot that is happening in this book, because so far I find that this book is a little bit lacking in the plot, as there's a lot going on, but I'm not really sure what the main purpose of it is. But I will check back in once I am done with this book. Hello, I do have some reading updates for you guys. I apologize again for not checking in as often as I should, and if you can tell from my voice, I am coming down with some type of cold, but I did just want to pop on here and update you guys and let you know that the first reading update that I have for you is that I did finish Anna K. I did end up giving this a 3.5 stars. It really did pick up in the second half. The first half, I wasn't like 100% loving it, but I also wasn't hating it. But then right after that update, a couple chapters later, there is some pretty serious stuff that takes place. There was a turn and like a little twist, I guess I could say, that I did not see coming. So I really did like that the book was a lot more hard-hitting than I was anticipating, and that took me completely by surprise. I love when a book can be very hard-hitting and you don't see it coming. So there was a lot that happened. It's actually quite sad what happens in this book, and just the way that the characters are dealing with this. This book deals with a lot of different subject matter, so I would say that if you are somebody who gets triggered very easily, then I would definitely look up trigger warnings for this book. But yeah, it did take a very unexpected turn, and again, I did not know that this was based on Anna Karenina, which I have not read, which I believe I told you guys in my first update. So I would be very curious to know how the two compare. If you guys have read both books, then please let me know down below in the comments how each of them compares to one another, if it's worth it to read like the original work. But I will say that my rating of 3.5 stars comes from the like beginning of this book being just a little bit too slow. There was just like a lot of teenage drama that I feel like didn't really need to be in it, but then as the book ends, I kind of understand where the author was coming from. Again, I cannot judge the book because I did not read the like original source material, but just from enjoyment factor and the pacing of the story, I am settling on a 3.5. And then the next update that I have for you, so I do apologize for not checking in at the 50% mark, but I did end up starting and finishing The Fields by Erin Young. This again is a crime fiction. It is like a mystery thriller, and I believe it is this author's debut. This takes place in Iowa, and there is a entire like plot and storyline that deals with like the agricultural industry, which is very prevalent in Iowa. So a little bit more background for this story. We are following our main character, who is a sergeant with the police department. Her name is Riley, and I believe that she is the only female police officer, or definitely the only female sergeant that has worked in this specific police department in Iowa. She gets called to a farm where a body was found in the fields of this farm. When she arrives on scene, she does realize that she actually knows who the victim is. They grew up together, and there is an entire mystery with her and this victim that is found. They do have a dark past, and there is a secret about their past that they do not want anybody finding out. And her friend is obviously found deceased in this field, and we are essentially following the story of that. There are other bodies that are found with similarities between the bodies, so they do believe that they are following a serial killer. So this did give me Criminal Mind vibes in that sense. The FBI is also called in to help with with this investigation at some point in the novel. So they do come from Quantico, which if you've ever watched Criminal Minds, that is also where they are based out of. So the premise of this book sounded absolutely up my alley. It sounded very, very interesting. I was very excited to get into this, but unfortunately this book just fell so flat for me. The backdrop of like Iowa's agricultural like industry just completely took me out of the story. I found it so boring. There were so many references to crops and cornfields and just things that I truly did not care about while reading this book. The mystery part of it was pretty interesting. I did really like the lead up to all of the murders. There was some very, very interesting things happening with the bodies that you do get to see because you get the perspective of the doctor that is conducting these autopsies on these bodies. But other than the mystery part of it, I was just completely bored with this story. And then there is like a trope of drugs being involved in this, which is a trope that I absolutely despise in my mystery and thrillers. I hate when they use like drug lords and like the drug industry to kind of like tie in the mystery. There is definitely a lot more that goes on in this book than just that, but that is just one trope that I really do not enjoy. So that also took me out of the story, decreased my rating because I just do not really like that trope at all. Then the ending of this book got absolutely wild. There is a plot twist with like corn, I believe it's corn, and a specific thing that is happening with this corn and the people that have eaten this corn. And it was just a plot twist that I truly thought was a reach. It was just absolutely out of left field. And I don't think that I loved it. I 100% didn't see it coming, but I don't think that I really enjoyed it. Again, just to wrap this up, I just thought that this book was super slow and I really didn't like a lot of the tropes that were happening in it. But I did find the mystery and the way that the bodies were described and the way that we got the perspective of the person giving the autopsies, and you kind of understood what was going on with how she was conducting these autopsies. I thought that that was really cool. But in the end, I just found it super boring and I do not plan on continuing the series. I will probably unhaul this book because I have no desire to pick it up or really recommend this to anybody. And I did end up giving this one a 2 out of 5 stars. But so far, I do think that this episode of Tackle My TBR is going really well. I don't know what I will pick up next, but once I have some updates, I will let you guys know. And again, I will try to update you guys at the 50% mark. It has been such a chaotic couple of weeks that this video has even taken a long time to film. So hopefully I can finish the next 2 books and come at you with some updates. Okay, hello, how are we all doing? I'm just getting ready to have a filming day. I'm filming a few videos today just for my channel, but I did want to give you guys my 50% of the way thoughts and update on The Devil's Thief, which is book 2 in the Last Magician series. So I'm just going to chat with you guys while I get ready. So because this is a second in a series, I can't really tell you guys what this book is about, and I can't really give you guys context on this book, but I can tell you what book number 1 is about. So if it does sound interesting to you and you guys want to pick it up, you guys do have that option. So book 1 is essentially a fantasy book where we are following a world. It is taking place in New York, and it is a world where magic no longer exists, but there are still a few people who do possess the ability to use magic. And these people, if they are caught using magic, they basically get sent to something called the Brink. They basically get trapped in this area called the Brink where they cannot escape from. And then we are following our main character, Esta, who is a very skilled thief. So she basically goes and steals artifacts from something called the Order, which are the people who created the Brink. That is the basic premise of what happens in book 1. So I am reading book 2. Again, this is the second in a series. I am just over 50% of the way through with this, and I am having a good time, but I do have some thoughts on this book. So the first thing that I will say about this book is that if you have not read book 1 in a little bit of time and you kind of forgot what happened in book 1, this book does a very good job of recapping book 1, almost to a fault, because it does kind of get a little bit repetitive, but it's really good at reintroducing the characters. Right from the beginning of the book, I was reintroduced to all of the characters, what their backstory was leading up to this point in the book. This does take place immediately after book 1. So so it is very easy to get back into the story. So if you haven't read book 1 in a while and you want to pick up book 2, I would suggest that you don't have to reread book 1 to do so, because book 2 does recap it very, very well. If you are not good at following multiple POVs and characters and their storylines, I wouldn't really suggest this book, because I feel like this book does have dual timelines. So we are following 2 timelines in here. Both of them are 2 years apart. So I believe it's 1902 and 1904, but I could be completely off with that. And then we are also following multiple POVs. So if you are someone who does not really enjoy that or gets confused by that, like me, it does get a little bit hard to follow all of the characters. There are a lot of returning characters, which is nice. And then there are also a few new ones that you have to keep track of, but it's not too bad so far. There is also a very, very, very slow burn romance that is taking place. And when I say slow burn, I mean like there were hints of it in book 1, and we are about 50% of the way through this book, and it is very, very slow burn. Like barely anything has happened. So if you do like a good slow burn, this would be perfect for you. So right now I am feeling like this book is sitting at a 4-star. I'm having a really good time with it. I'm loving the story. I'm loving being back in this world. And I really just like how Lisa Maxwell is able to write her characters and the story. So I am having a very good time. The only negative thing I would say about this book is that it is getting very, very repetitive. And I feel like the stakes in this book are just always the same. It's really hard to talk about without giving away spoilers and stuff, but essentially these characters are on a mission to obtain things. And I just feel like every time they are close to obtaining them, it just gets ripped away, or anytime they do obtain the things that they are looking for, they end up losing them as well. So I just feel like we are in this cycle of not much is happening, and the pacing is pretty slow in this book. I feel like the author has literally said the same thing multiple different times, just in different ways. So I don't feel like the story is progressing as like much as it should. I feel like this book could definitely be cut down. It does not need to be as long as it is. It is a super, super long book. So I do feel like a big chunk of it could have been taken out, but I still really do enjoy the story. So I do really like my time while I am reading it. But yeah, that is kind of my thoughts and feelings on this book. I will check back in once I have finished with this and give you my final thoughts, but just based on the pacing of this book, I don't think much more is going to happen in terms of the story moving forward. So I probably will have the same thoughts near the end, but I will check back in once I finish with The Devil's Thief. Okay, hello. I did just want to really quickly pop on here and give you guys my final thoughts and feelings on The Devil's Thief by Lisa Maxwell. As predicted, my feelings towards this book did not change. So I'm not going to make this update like super long-winded or anything like that. The book did stay at a 4-star. I did feel like it was way too long for everything that we got in this book, but I am going to continue on with the series. And again, my feelings really did not change on this book, as these same things were kind of happening throughout the entire book. I am going to settle on a 4-star, and I will check back in once I do start reading the last book for this video, which is The Woman in the Library. Okay, hello. This is going to be my 50% update of my read through The Woman in the Library by Solari Gentile. So I am exactly 50% done with this book, and it is a ride, let me tell you. So just to give you guys a little bit more context onto this book, and I'm going to try my best to explain it, but it is very confusing, and it did take me a while to understand exactly what is going on. So essentially, this is a story about an author who is writing a book. So the mystery portion of this book is actually a story that is written by, I believe, our main character, Hannah. So Hannah is writing a book about these 4 strangers that meet at this Boston library. And while they are at this library, they hear a woman scream, and then they also do find a body. We are reading this story as it is being written. So each chapter does give us a little bit more like piece to this puzzle. And then Hannah is also corresponding with somebody else named Leo, and he is essentially there to help her with this novel. He's kind of like a beta reader, but I also believe that he is a struggling author as well. That is kind of what I have gathered from the 50% mark of this book. Again, it is very confusing, and sorry if you can hear my dog. She just decided to start chewing her bone at this exact moment. So yeah, this novel is very much like a story story within a story, which is a trope that I actually do really like. I am going to be honest though, I really was not vibing with this book at the beginning. I thought that I was going to absolutely hate this book, but once I did start like understanding kind of what was going on, and clearly I still don't have like 100% grasp on what's going on, but I feel like I get like the main story and kind of like what the author is trying to do. Once I kind of got a grasp on that, I truly did start really enjoying this book. I am following the character stories pretty easily, and the story is interesting, especially like reading these characters' backstories. And then I really do like the correspondence with Leo. I feel like there is going to be some type of twist with that. I am just like trying to predict exactly what that twist will be, but I feel like my prediction is just completely off the mark. And yeah, I guess the only like real critique I have about this book thus far of just how like confusing and difficult it is to kind of keep everything on track. I would be very interested to see like what the book looks like physically. I was looking at Goodreads reviews just to kind of see like what people were thinking about this book, and the reviews are kind of all over the place. Either people have been loving this and they think that it is so clever, or people have just absolutely hated it and DNF'd this book. So I'm definitely not on either side. I'm not absolutely hating it, and I don't think it's going to be an all-time favorite, but this is a very unique concept in a book. So I am curious to see how the author decides to end it, and if the like mystery aspect of this is a satisfying conclusion. But so far I am having a really good time with it. This is a complete surprise for me because, like I said, I really was not vibing with this at the beginning of reading it. I thought that this was going to drag and just be such a miss for this episode, but I am happy to say that I am actually quite enjoying myself. And yeah, once I am done with this book, I will check back in with you guys and then conclude this entire episode of Tackle My TBR. Okay, hello, how are we doing? I did just want to pop on here and give you guys a final update on my reading. So it has been a few days since I have finished the last book for this video, so I will quickly talk about my final thoughts for The Woman in the Library, and then I will wrap up this entire Tackle My TBR episode 4. So for The Woman in the Library, I actually really did end up enjoying it a lot more than I thought I was going to. I don't remember if I was saying, but it was a little bit hard to get into at the beginning. It was quite confusing because of the entire like story within a story. So it was very hard to wrap my brain around the fact that the entire library scene at the Boston Library was actually a story that our main character, who is an author, was writing. But I really, really liked the reveals and the way that the author decided to do these reveals. There is a whole correspondence going on between two characters, so the author and then another up-and-coming writer, and that part of the book I thought was super, super fascinating. I really, really enjoyed that. The only thing I will say about this book is that I don't feel like it's super memorable. Like, even right now, as it's been a couple of days since I've read it, I don't really 100% remember exactly what took place. I do remember like the ending of this book, but there are a lot of things that are a little bit like hazy in my memory. So the only thing I will say about this is that I don't find that it was like super, super memorable, which I'm not mad about. I did really enjoy this. I ended up giving this a 3.5 stars out of 5. I had a good time with it. I'm happy that I read it, and I'm happy that I seem to like it a lot more than what like the average reviewer is. But I can see why this book doesn't work for people, because it does get very confusing and you really have to pay attention to what's happening in this book. But I actually really loved the whole story within a story. And again, I liked the way that the author like wrote these correspondence between these two characters and kind of like intermingled everything together. So overall, I had a good time with it, a 3.5 stars. So I'm not mad about that. And I'm happy that I was able to read that book and get it off of my TBR, as it was one that I was a little bit nervous to get into. Okay, so very quickly, I do want to wrap up this video. So the first book I read for this video was Rabbit in Red by Joe Chonacas. I did end up giving that a 3 star. I thought that the stakes were super, super low in that book, and I really didn't find myself caring about the characters, but I loved the horror nostalgia that I got from reading that book, so I did settle on a 3 star. The next book I read was Anna K by Jenny Lee. That book did start off a little bit slow for me, even though there were a lot of things happening, but near the 50% mark, there is definitely a turning point that took place in the novel that made me much more invested in the characters, and there is definitely a lot of sad things that is happening in that book. So that did bump up my rating. I did end up giving that a 3.5 stars. The worst book I did read for this video is going to be The Fields by Erin Young. This was a mystery and thriller, and the thing that really didn't work for me in this book was the backdrop. I really just did not care about like the agricultural setting of this book and just the politics with the farming community. I don't think that the book was necessarily poorly written. It just wasn't something that I was interested in. And again, like I said, there is a trope in this book that I absolutely just despise in my thrillers and my mysteries, and I feel like it's just such a cop-out and really just didn't have a good time. This is just a personal opinion for me. I don't think that the book is necessarily bad, and I did end up giving this one a 2 out of 5 stars. Then I read The Devil's Thief by Lisa Maxwell. This is book 2 in the Last Magicians series. A very solid sequel. I did think that this book was just a tad bit too long. I felt like it could have been a lot shorter, especially with all of like the runaround that was happening in this book, but I did end up giving this one a 4 out of 5 stars. And then finally, I read The Woman in the Library by Solari Gentile, and this I did give a 3.5 stars to. I absolutely loved the writing style of this book. I love how it was told, although I was a little bit confused and I found it to not be super memorable, but I did still have a very good time. I would consider this episode of Tackle My TBR a success. I had a lot of average reads, but they were above average reads, I would say, so like in the higher 3s. I am very happy that I decided to do 5 books for this video, as well as I got 5 additional books off of my physical TBR, which you guys know is the entire purpose of these videos. But yeah, that is going to be it for Tackle My TBR episode 4. I should have Tackle My TBR episode 5 out shortly after this one. I was very delayed because of the trip that I had to take, and as you guys will see, there are some clips in this video of that trip. So I'm hoping to do some catch up and try to get back on schedule with these Tackle My TBR videos. That is it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you did make it to the end of this video, leave me the snake emoji to represent the best read of this video, which was The Devil's Thief. If you did like today's video, I would also love it if you would let me know by hitting that thumbs up like button. And as always, if you are new here, I would love to have you stick around. So please hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys all in my next one. Bye.